In the dimly lit depths of the fortress world of Cadia, where the shadows of ancient bastions would once loom as silent sentinels over its ashen plains, there had long existed an elite brotherhood forged in the crucible of unrelenting duty that was expected of those who inhabited Cadia by the Imperium of Man. They are the Kasrkin, the vanguard of humanity's defiance against the encroaching darkness that is ever present in the age of the 41st millennium. As the cold winds would howl through labyrinthine corridors of the ancient bastions across Cadia, a lone figure stalks its hallways clad in the resplendent camouflaged regalia of the Astra Militarum. His armour is not a dress uniform though, for it is visibly etched with the scars of countless battles, each one a testament to the trials endured and victories won in the name of the Emperor. With every heavy step, the thud of boots echoes like a sombre hymnal throughout the fortification, but also a prelude to the conflict that is still to come, the destruction that shall be unleashed in their name. His face is set like stone, gaze unwavering, and it pierces through any veil of uncertainty that may exist or that would shroud a battlefield. For he is Kasrkin. His mind is a fortress. He bears the weight of a weapon forged in the heart of a dying star. Its plasma core seethes with the promise of annihilation for those who would dare oppose the might of the Imperium. And behind him follow more of his kin, his brethren who march in lockstep. They're all clad in the same armour. Their martial prowess has fashioned them as Imperial sentinels. Their eyes are alight with the fervour of righteous zeal. Their souls are tempered in the crushing maelstrom of adversity that has deluged every border of Imperial space. But no more. The stand must be made, the Xenos exterminated, the heretics scoured, rebellions crushed, instigators made examples of. For while they live, Cadia still stands. They are the embodiment of its indomitable spirit, the last bastion against the tides of heresy and corruption that threaten to consume the entire galaxy. For in the darkest depths of despair, amidst the blood-soaked fields of battle, it is they who stand as the bulwark against the night, the heralds of humanity's salvation, the Kasrkin elite of the Astra Militarum. In the galactic theatres of war that face humanity, Kasrkin are not wielded as blunt instruments of war as are the bulk of the Militarum, but rather as precious instruments, specific scalpels deployed in small strike teams that are meticulously trained squads of individuals. Each member of these units will embody a fusion of battle-hardened skills and adaptability, each honed through relentless training and arduous missions that often would span extended periods of deployment. For they are bound not only by duty, but also an unshakable faith in their cause. In the wake of Cadia's destruction during the 13th Black Crusade, despite the planet breaking, the legacy of Cadia and the Kasrkin endures. Many units will persist throughout the galaxy, and now many will exist to pass on their training and standards to a new generation of Cadian survivors, their descendants, and even other-worlders. This is only further renewed by a new quest for vengeance against the arch-enemy, for despite the loss of their world, their resolve remains unyielding, even amidst the grim dark realities of the 41st millennium. Drawn from the same world as the esteemed Cadian shock troop regiments, Kasrkin are officially classified by the Departamento Munitorum as Grenadiers, and this is owing to their heavy weapons and tactical training. Their name itself echoes the fortress cities of Cadia, known as Kasrs, in the native Cadian dialect of Low Gothic. Upon Cadia, its people long held back the dark forces that came forth from the Eye of Terror over millennia, and it was a world so heavily militarised that the majority of its populace were able to field strip and wield a lasgun before they were even able to read. It is from among such peoples, and from within those already skilled Cadian planetary forces, that the Kasrkin were drawn from, and they were trained until they occupied the pinnacle of the Cadian military elite. Yet their personal backgrounds were most often humble, not like those of the Tempestus Scions who hailed from the Schola. Most Kasrkin would be chosen as potential candidates whilst they were still fresh recruits within the Cadian planetary defence forces. Others would be drawn from the ranks of hardened Militarum veterans who had proven themselves able to survive and do their duty across multiple engagements and war zones. Their training surpasses even that of the legendary Imperial Stormtroopers, and this is in part due to their high-focused dedication that was once fixed upon the preservation of Cadia, contrasting with the broader mandate of many Imperials to defend the entire Imperium of mankind. Of course, in more recent times this has become a revised focus for the Kasrkin. But baseline Kasrkin are already viewed as figures of unmatched ability by the standard Militarum. But within the esteemed ranks of their own, there are those warriors whose valour has been tested in more theatres of conflict than most could imagine, facing enemies few would emerge from to tell the tale. These veteran Kasrkin command a respect enough to draw even the attention of generals and high-ranking officials within the Militarum's hierarchy. However, despite being a desirable force for any ranking members of the Imperial Guard to wish present in their toolbox of planetary deployments, the approval for their use rests solely within the purview of the surviving elements of Cadia's high command, or whatever equivalent is present in the current age. For anyone to ascend to the revered ranks of the Kasrkin, though, one must prove their mettle within the esteemed Cadian shock troops. This is through blood, sweat and sacrifice, for they emerge already as hardened warriors tempered by battle into instruments of the Emperor's will. From this crucible of battle-hardened veterans, the chosen few are ushered into the hallowed halls of the Kasrkin, where, of course, punishing regimes of additional training in the harshest of war zones await, and thus forging each trooper further into an ever-hardened instrument of war, folded and tempered by the enemies of humanity again and again, until they will cut as would the hardest of blades. But Kasrkin are not mindless killing machines, they're honourable and proficient killers. They know instinctively what to do in any given situation and are able to operate often with minimal communication to their brothers around them. Their lives are given entirely to the completion and operation of objectives and training in the art of war. They embrace a relentless regimen of study, prayer, exercise and specialist training operations, and this has refined and maintained their abilities and their minds to enable them to reach beyond established limits for human performance, not to mention the fact that they're also said to have received some level of enhancement through biological modifications to better enable them to both carry and utilise the tools necessary to navigate the battlefield of M41 with a balance of resilience and deadly efficiency. In terms of composition, they follow the standard Militarum elements but within a smaller elite squad architecture. A sergeant or higher will lead a team, and these will be individuals who, even among the Kasrkin, are considered high-skilled, experienced soldiers. Yet they will also not distance themselves from those who they stand beside, for they experience all the same hardships as their brothers and will know how to bring out the best in each individual. Now, few would call a Kasrkin a rank-and-file soldier, for even standard troopers are consummate professionals far above the standard fare of the Imperial Guard. They will have endured all manner of battles and war zone environments, and most will be highly decorated. Within each squad they will of course have a Vox Trooper, for these enable longer range communications and the coordination required for multi-squad or even larger deployments. They could, for example, relay intelligence between senior officers and comrades to call in artillery and orbital strikes or request extraction upon the completion of an objective. Gunners within the squad are the heavy-hitting specialists, as they will be the most capable in wielding powerful gear such as melter guns or grenade launchers. Even though all Kasrkin are trained to be proficient, many will just excel in specific areas. There are also those demolition experts who have had additional training in the use of explosives such as melter mines to blast through bulkheads aboard ships or on the ground to access installations or undermine enemy positions. These demo experts may often be limited in terms of the distance that they're able to reach before detonation is necessary, or they may just come under heavy fire whilst placing a charge in position, so they will carry additional blast padding upon them to help increase their general survivability. With that in mind, each squad will contain a combat medic, for while any Kasrkin will endure considerable injury before considering themselves unable to fight on, they are clear-minded and objective enough to understand that having a medic is critical to ensuring that the mission can be completed, something which of course stands above all other considerations. While the standard guard win battles by massive scale of force and attrition, most Kasrkin are deployed on highly focused objectives, where they will have little to any support, and so the ability to patch up a squad mate and continue the fight is of paramount importance compared to large-scale planetary assaults, which see the deployment of tens, even hundreds of thousands of guardsmen. Generally, Kasrkin are operating on a much more focused scale. And to that end, one of the final roles within a Kasrkin squad is that, of course, of the recon and sharpshooter troopers. Both are experts in infiltration and can utilize tools such as camo cloaks, advanced Auspex devices, and other tools to enable the analysis of the local environment and potential enemies. Their role is of course in feeding intel to their squad or other squads or even wider elements of a Militarum combined campaign, but it's also to infiltrate and eliminate high-value targets and individuals at range. This meaning they may have to splinter from the rest of the squad at a certain point to achieve an objective or even be left behind. For an overall best example of Kasrkin squad work, we can look to a quotation from one General Matthias Ackermann, who stated that one of their squads opened the Hargel Pass for us. 3 more rescued that company of the 14th trapped on Hill 388, and a couple more destroyed 83 greenskin aircraft on the ground at one of the Xenos bases. Right now, I've got about 24 teams wreaking havoc across the battlefield. They're killing orcs, feeding us intelligence, and completing every task. Were I always to have had some of these troops to hand, the Tarnis and Learn All 3 campaigns would have gone much more smoothly. When it comes to war gear, of course, Kasrkin also are the elite here, but generally they seem to be clad in carapace armour, which is sealed against the hazards of environments and battle. These suits consist of rigid armourplates and reinforced ceramite plates, and whilst there is a standard camouflage pattern for them, which was historically designed to fit within the forests of Cadia, Kasrkin can be issued with uniform and armour plating that suits their deployment, and this can be from dense urban environments to space hulks, barren deserts and frigid ice worlds. In addition, as an elite force, they of course receive environmental training on how to survive, adapt and fight across a myriad of biomes. Being Kasrkin, even should they be required to fight in an unfamiliar environment, it is very likely that they would be able to quickly learn and adapt the best means by which to engage in such a zone, as the very nature of them is to endure and prevail through sheer grit, determination, initiative, and to not only stay alive but fight and be relied upon to complete their objective, all while ensuring the safety of the man beside you. The Kasrkin wield weapons of rare craftsmanship in terms of the wider Imperium and the Militarum, such as hell guns and hotshot lasguns as seen used by Tempestus Scions. For these are far deadlier lasguns than the standard issue of their brethren, enabling them to scythe through lightly armoured enemies and focus fire to bring down heavier targets where an ordinary guardsman would just fail. Their weapons require reinforced barrels though, and thermal cooling cells, as well as gyro stabilizing power packs, and this equipment is more difficult to maintain and deploy than standard guard fare. But the Kasrkin are so proficient in everything, including their gear, they can even dismantle and rebuild them if necessary, or at least to a degree anyway. They're after all not Mechanicus. Generally, they are seen to wear sealed helmets for operations in any environment, including hazardous chem zones or alien spore-infested jungles, and their carapace armour also deflects and absorbs incoming projectiles far better than just the standard Astra Militarum flak armour. So Kasrkin have to wear and carry a considerable amount more in terms of gear than regular guard. And this is why their physiological enhancements are there to enable them to move more freely while carrying considerably heavier gear. In some respects they are reminiscent of what we might remember with the Solar Auxilia, as it was often said that they were second only to the Astartes. Now, while a Kasrkin may not quite meet such a definition, they certainly stand a clear division above regular militarum, who are often little more than peon workers, handed a lasgun and taught how to march. Then within the Kasrkin you still have the sergeants and their veterans, who will often have access and be seen to wield even more rare and powerful war gear, more commonly reserved for use by Astra Militarum officers, and this can include such rare objects as power swords and hotshot las pistols. More broadly, Kasrkin though are authorised and all trained in the use of special weapons, as we were saying, to enable them to fulfill an assault role on whatever battlefield they are operating within. And this can include plasma guns, melter guns, grenade launchers, flame weapons, missile launchers, etc. But these are still the basic weapons of war, for Kasrkin can use a broad spectrum of war gear for specialist operations, including all manner of optical tools, suppression devices, scanning equipment, camouflage stealth packs designed to enable them to infiltrate heavy enemy installations, basically whatever they need to get the job done. Because for the Kasrkin, they go where few others are able or willing to. To serve as one is to embrace a life of perpetual sacrifice, constantly thrust into the toughest of missions, and face foes of the Imperium few could even stand to look upon. They face all these challenges with a stoic resolve that borders on fanaticism. Though the burden of expectation weighs heavily upon their shoulders, the Kasrkin are renowned for their ability to remain steadfast, maintaining unshakable and unwavering individual discipline. Indeed, the annals of history are replete with tales of their valour, their precise firepower and iron discipline, often able to turn the tide of a battle in humanity's favour, from shattered bastions of fortress worlds to unknown planets on the far reaches of Imperial territory. They have turned battles that were considered all but lost against the Greenskin, the Tyrannid, the traitors. They will accept and engage orders with little more than a stoic nod of acceptance. While others would talk before, during and after, the Kasrkin operate with a cold, objective efficiency. Mission complete, what's next? Of course, since the fall of Cadia, the same concentrated pool of potential recruitment has disappeared, and while many who would hail from Cadia were stationed elsewhere at the time, and who now continue to carry forth the culture and tenets of their world, one might wonder, where do the Kasrkin originate from in the contemporary Imperium? Well, new recruits still come from shock troop regiments, usually of Cadian origin if possible, but an increasing number now also hail from worlds that are not Cadia. These soldiers will have much to prove to Cadian comrades, something they are more than aware of from the day of selection, and it is a point of extreme pride for any who endure the intense trials and the rigours of Cadian training to achieve the Caducades Sea Eagle tattoo, a seabird native to Cadia, which is ritually applied to the neck of every Cadian-born Kasrkin upon their induction to the ranks of this elite force, and something that is never given lightly to external recruits. Nestled within the sprawling expanse of the Segmentum Obscurus, amidst the labyrinthine reaches of the Imperium's vast territories, lay the desolate and forbidding world of Lorn V. This arid and unforgiving planet was shrouded in a perpetual gloom, but it is a world of contrast where towering mesas cast long shadows over vast expanses of barren wasteland, where rugged peaks would be obscured by swirling clouds of dust, but beneath the skies jagged canyons were carved deep into the landscape. But Lorn V was a world gripped by hardship and deprivation. Once thriving cities were now ruins, their crumbling spires serving as grim reminders of past glories that have long since faded into obscurity. The planet's populace itself ekes out a meagre existence amidst the ruins, their lives defined by toil and struggle against the harsh elements and the ever-present spectre of poverty. Yet amidst such desolation, there existed a palpable sense of resilience and defiance among the inhabitants. Despite their world being entirely ravaged and their lives full of hardship, they refused to yield to this despair. They were united, their spirits unbroken by the trials of life that had fallen upon them. But for as plain as its exterior, it was not a world without secrets. For beneath its surface was a labyrinth of tunnels and caverns, and these were said to be inhabited by creatures of unimaginable power. There were even whispers of dark rituals and forbidden knowledge, Such rumours among the populace would be easily dismissed, and in the eyes of the Imperium, Lorn V may be little more than a forgotten backwater world. It had been governed by the Imperium for millennia, until the sudden arrival of a warband of World Eaters and a war of the Orcs. A vicious struggle endured for many years between the Orcs and the warband of the World Eaters, who were championed by one Chaos Lord Kroll. For much of that time, it was an entirely one-sided fight, as the Orcs were often too divided amongst themselves, as is typical, to really pose any threat to the World Eaters. But after the arrival of a fierce Orc warlord known as Gorguts and his reinforcing war, the Orcs of Lorn V would suddenly become a real threat to the World Eaters. As a result of this, the conflict between the two sides significantly escalated. One Imperial General Stern had come into information which enabled him to learn that there were salvageable remains of an Imperator-class Titan, the Dominatus, that had been disabled during the Heresy and was still present on Lorn V. This of course caused the launch of an Imperial invasion of the planet, with his 412th Cadian shock troopers to reclaim both the planet and the ancient Titan for the Imperium. To make things considerably more complicated, the Eldar under command of one Farseer Taldir also had infiltrated the planet, which they believed to be a Necron tomb world. So the Eldar wished to be present, as they believed the ongoing conflict between the Imperium now, the Orcs and Chaos could potentially stir the Necrons from their sleep, and they were determined to stop this from happening. As one of the bizarre but common situations that can occur when it comes to Orcs, when the Imperium arrived, Lord Kroll of the World Eaters and Gorguts struck a brief and uneasy alliance that they titled the Forces of Disorder to fight against their common enemies of the Imperium and the Eldar. General Stern of the 412th had made a special appeal to Lord Castellan of Cadia to include several groups of Kasrkin in his command. After much consideration, this request was granted, based strongly upon Stern's battle honours and record as an Imperial Guard officer. And to that end, and not entirely dissimilarly to the Kasrkin, the general was admired by his officers for his bravery and often would even enter into battle alongside his troops, a pretty uncommon and some might say unwise trait for those of such a position. But it was his preference to assign the squads of Kasrkin as his personal bodyguard, a role that the Kasrkin were entirely suited for, specialist elite operations. But far from standing on the ceremony as many of them may have expected to do so, Stern was often to be found at the very heart of the battle. Soon after Stern's arrival at the former capital city, this is when he would learn that the Eldar were present on the world. But faced with the severely aggressive attacks of the Orcs and Chaos Marines, Stern and Taldir themselves reluctantly agreed to work together in order to just survive. So together, the Imperium and a force of Eldar aspect warriors drove the Orcs and Chaos Marines back with a series of blistering advancements. As is often the case with such engagements, Imperial records are not always clear as to the specific details of engagements. But what is noted is that no victory would have been possible without the Kasrkin, who were sent forward as the vanguard of the Imperial Guard assault and excelled in their role, so much so that the foe was said to be reeling from the attack, but it came at a cost. The casualties to the Kasrkin were significant, especially in such a brutally intense crucible of war. In many respects, it was not an ideal deployment of the Kasrkin, for whilst they were able to deal significant damage to the enemy and give the Imperium the upper hand, their firepower and training counted for little against the tsunami of horrors that sprang forth from the frozen surface of the world. It was often a case of merciless alien slaughter against Kasrkin discipline, and discipline won the day. The aftermath of such eventualities are rarely clear, but the survivors of Lorn V, along with some after-action reports, tell a mixed and unclear picture of what followed. Some say that Stern and his men were betrayed by the Eldar, cut down in a hail of shuriken fire, which is a good example of why making alliances with Xenos is considerably dangerous. It is said that the Imperial forces were forced to retreat from the world and the Titan declared lost. But elsewhere, it was reported that Stern, killed by the Orc Gorguts, his head put on a pointy stick according to the orcs, along with the World Eaters champion Lord Kroll, with the traitor marines themselves also driven from the planet and scattered after the loss. As to what happened to the Titan Dominatus, it is entirely unknown, but given the general picture of things, it appears possible the orcs may have appropriated it. The campaign was a disaster for the Imperium, but the honour of the Kasrkin remained intact. In the aftermath of these events, the Imperial Ultima Segmentum Command dispatched Governor Lucas Alexander to track down and capture Farseer Taldir after their actions on Lorn V. This would begin the campaign now remembered in Imperial records as the Dark Crusade, which would take place on the world of Kronos within a planet in the eastern fringe of the Imperium, and where a local human population had been absorbed into the Tau Empire. Within the commonality of the Imperial Guard, the Kasrkin are revered with a mixture of awe, respect, and perhaps for many a hint of envy. Because to the standard guardsmen, Kasrkin represent the pinnacle of military excellence, unmatched achievement, and unbreakable dedication. And while to be fair there are many within the Militarum who might fit the same description, it is their reputation as the elite warriors of Cadia itself which paves expectations in the eyes of others. Within this, it's important to remember the sheer volume of standard Imperial Guard compared to those of the elite forces within the Imperium. For many, the glimpse of a Kasrkin squad marching in lockstep would be enough to resonate as deeply as that of the Astartes, for within them is a symbol of hope and rousing morale amidst the incoming carnage and chaos of battle. When an entrenched force of guardsmen is running low on ammunition, spirit, and perhaps even manpower, to witness the deployment and reinforcement of those such as the Kasrkin is a warm, rousing reassurance that even in the darkest of hours, the Imperium's finest will stand ready to defend humanity and their comrades, no matter their worth and standing in the eyes of the bureaucracy. Yet, as is often the case with the elite forces of the Imperium, alongside admiration, there will always exist levels of trepidation. For a disciplined demeanour and precise execution of orders may inspire confidence in those who would fight alongside them amidst the horrors of war, it also can be an extremely intimidating expectation. It's no surprise that the Kasrkin's reputation for excellence is matched only by their endurance. The severity of their training and the standards to which they hold themselves to will be to many a reminder of the vast gulf that separates the elite from the rank and file, most of whom will of course never have the privilege to serve alongside the Kasrkin. They must be content to witness them from afar or envision them through reputation alone, which like so many things remains shrouded in the imperial obfuscation of propagandized legend. For tales of heroism and valour spread like a fire through the ranks of the Imperial Guard, fueling the imagination and igniting the zealous fervour of those who aspire to follow in their footsteps. To be counted among the Kasrkin is to attain a level of prestige and honour that few can hope to achieve. It is a mark of distinction that sets them apart as elite champions of the Imperium. For in the aftermath of the cataclysmic fall of Cadia, amidst the ashes of that once proud fortress world, the Kasrkin continued to keep the indomitable spirit of Cadia alive as beacons of hope amidst the darkness that threatens to engulf the contemporary Imperium. As the fires of chaos continue to ravage the galaxy, their resolve stands unbroken by the loss of their homeworld. If anything, the Kasrkin find themselves thrust into a new role within the Imperium's hierarchy, for they are no longer bound by the confines of their shattered fortress world. They are now reborn as emissaries of the Emperor's vengeance, for they deliver his retribution against any and all who would seek to extinguish the light of humanity. The shadow of Cadia, though, lingers far beyond that fateful battle, for all who still live must face the reactions of the entire Imperium wherever they go, not least the Kasrkin themselves and all who were of Cadia. Some will experience uncontrollable guilt, others face outspoken resentment from their own kin who survived, for many were deployed elsewhere and could not return to defend the planet. Some might even question the entire modus operandi of the Kasrkin, in the sense that this was an unrecoverable personal failure, even if they were deployed many systems away at the time. This bears a reminiscence not dissimilar to the period of scouring after the heresy, where different bands of Kasrkin will have very different reactions to just what they should do and how they should react to this situation. And so, similarly to many Astartes after the heresy, some Kasrkin have become ultra zealous, operating almost independently and without any oversight, seeking forgiveness only from the Emperor himself, while many others will throw themselves even harder and more selflessly into battle on their missions in a manner few other than those who hail from Krieg would recognise. Not all, though, are crushed by the past. Many understand that they need to move forward into the future with a constructive mind to that. They understand that with all they could bring to the enemy, it would have objectively made no difference, and so do not carry a personal sense of blame for the ultimate disaster. They know that all that matters is that they would have all stood together, and that ultimately the planet broke before the Guard did. Therefore, in their minds, so long as any single Cadian draws breath, no matter where they are in the galaxy, Cadia stands. With the advent of Guilliman's Indomitus Crusade, the Kasrkin will be placed alongside other elites at the forefront of the Imperium's efforts to reclaim lost territories and push back the encroaching darkness, be that securing strategic objectives, rooting out pockets of heretical resistance and corruption, or to simply serve as a vanguard for humanity's defiance against the ruinous powers who seek to corrupt, enslave, and destroy all humankind. In the sprawling frontier of Guilliman's Crusade, where forces of Chaos and Xenos alike vie for dominance, the Kasrkin will be found, standing unflinching against the darkness to inspire hope in the hearts of comrades and strike fear into their enemies. In the eyes of the Imperial Guard, the Kasrkin are more than mere soldiers. They are exemplars of the Emperor's will, and across the galactic expanse of civilization that is the Imperium, where bleak tides of despair lap relentlessly against the shores of humanity's existence, they exist as a stalwart redoubt, the front line who push back against the encroaching darkness. They are the Kasrkin, a force to be reckoned with and not to be underestimated. Their legacy is destined to endure for generations to come, and amidst the bloodshed and carnage of war, even in the shadow of their personal catastrophic loss of Cadia, their ultimate objective has never shifted: the preservation of humanity, the sanctity of the Imperium. For with every battle fought and every victory won, their actions as vessels for the will of the God Emperor stands as an indomitable testament to the undying spirit of mankind all throughout the galaxy. No matter the scale of adversity they may face, from the darkest horrors that lie within the coldness of the void, or the unknown abominations that exist within the darkness of the human heart.